Mary had a little lamb.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Help is on the way.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
Oh, for the love of Pete. Happy Friday, you bastards. Happy Friday. The defense is trying to make the case that the Senate needs to acquit the Donald Trump for inciting a mob to attack the Capitol in an attempt to stop the certification of a free and fair election. The reason has just changed all day. It's just, they're almost done. They say, I hope, because I want to talk to you about this. This has been going on for days now, and we need to discuss. But, all right, let's listen to Castor. This is him. This is it. This is the man. Oh, by the way, because we're coming in, like in the middle, let me tell you what his new theory is. His new theory is that because the troops that Donald Trump amassed, the mob, right? They were armed, they were ready, they had brought weapons, they had, thought about how to attack, when to attack. They were just there waiting for what they said to their lawyers was the activation or the command or the order from Donald Trump to go. Now, they're arguing that because they were pre-planned, premeditated, that Trump had nothing to do with it. I don't know how you get there from where they are, but that's where they're going.
And the word fine did not come out of thin air. Based on an analysis of publicly available voter data that the ballot rejection rate in Georgia in 2016 was approximately 6.42%.
Oh, he's moved on.
And even though a tremendous amount of new first-time mail-in ballots were included in the 2020 count, the Georgia rejection rate in 2020 was a mere 0.4%, a drop-off from 6.42% to 0.4%.
Oh, he's arguing that Trump
President
had
Trump
every
wanted
right.
the signature verification to be done in public.
Oh, my God.
How can a request for signature verifications to be done in public be a basis for a charge for inciting a riot? With that background, it is clear that President Trump's comments and the use of the word "find" were solely related to his concerns with the inexplicable dramatic drop in Georgia's ballot rejection rates. Let's examine how the word "find" was used throughout that conversation. Mr. Trump's first use of the word "find" was as follows, quote, "We think that if you check the signatures, a real check of the signatures going back in Fulton County, you'll find at least a couple 100,000 of forged signatures of people who have been forged. And we are quite sure that's going to happen." President Trump also used "find" as follows, quote, "Now, why aren't we doing signature, and why can't it be open to the public? And why can't we have professionals do it instead of rank amateurs who will never find anything and don't want to find anything? They don't want to find, they don't want to find anything. Someday you'll tell me the reason why, because I don't understand your reasoning. But someday you'll tell me the reason why. But why don't you want to find?" President Trump echoed his previous sentiments, again in the context of pursuing a legitimate and robust investigation into the lack of signature verification for mail-in and absentee ballots. Quote, "And why can't we have professionals do it instead of rank amateurs who will never find anything and don't want to find anything? They don't want to find anything, they don't want to find anything."
Very presidential.
They don't want to find, they don't want to find anything. Someday you'll tell me why, because I don't understand your reasoning, but someday you'll tell me why.
He already said
Why don't you
this.
want to find? We can go through signature verification and we'll find hundreds of thousands of signatures, and you can let us do it. And the only way you can do it, as you know, is to go to the past. But you didn't do that in Cobb County. You just looked at one page compared to another. The only way you could do a signature verification is to go from one that signed it on November whatever, recently, and compare it to 2 years ago, 4 years ago, 6 years ago, or even one. And you'll find that you have many different signatures. But in Fulton, where they dumped ballots, you will find that you have many that aren't even signed and that you have many forgeries. End quote.
That's a lie.
Mr. Trump continued to use the word find throughout the conversation. Each and every other time in the context of his request that Mr. Raffensperger undertake a review of signature verifications and his concerns generally with ballot integrity and his reported electoral deficit, here are a few examples. Quote, but why wouldn't you want to find the right answer, Brad? Instead of keep saying that the numbers are right, because those numbers are so wrong. Another example, quote, we think that if you check the signatures, a real check of the signatures going back in Fulton County, you'll find at least a couple 100,000 of forged signatures of people who have been forged, and we are quite sure that's going to happen, end quote. Moreover, there was nothing untoward with President Trump, or any other candidate for that matter, speaking with the lead elections officer of a state. That's why the Georgia Secretary of State took a call along with members of his team, one of whom decided to record it and release it to the press. The only reason this conversation is being discussed in this chamber is because, once again, the media and their Democratic allies distorted the true conversation to mislead you and the American public.
Oh, my God. This is dangerous. This is really, really freaky. This is dangerous.
So we have a complete lack of evidence for the article of impeachment presented by the House managers. So why are we here? Politics. Their goal is to eliminate a political opponent, to substitute their judgment for the will of the voters.
Why bother with a Senate trial of Donald Trump? He's no longer president.
He'll be out of office anyway.
Is it to keep him from ever running again?
Make sure he can never run for office again.
Keep him from running for office again.
Donald Trump would not be able to run for office again.
Barring him from running for office again.
Disqualified from running for office.
Disqualify him from ever running from office again.
Disqualified from running for office again.
It's about focusing that he can never run again.
Remove him from ever running for office again.
Never be able to run for office again.
To ban former President Trump from running again.
If we don't impeach this president, he will get reelected.
Oh, that is so out of context. My God. I
The
love
goal is
the
to
jazzy
eliminate a
music.
political opponent,
Oh,
to
my
substitute
God. This is so
their
dishonest.
judgment for the will of the voters.
The will of the voters. He lost.
Members of the Senate, our country needs to get back to work.
Oh, this man, this Bruce Castor dude, this man is a freak. Okay, just so you know, this is all for the audience of one. This is to please Donald Trump, who's watching this. The idea that the word find was used in a positive fashion when he called Raffensperger and told him he just needed to find one more vote than Biden got. And he's trying to say, oh, but he was trying to find the truth. He was trying to. This is crap. And we know this because Gabriel Sterling said this has got to stop. Someone's going to get hurt. Someone's going to get shot. That's what happened.
all things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
All right, so the defense has rested. They have yielded the remainder of their time. That was their case. And their case was a world heavyweight championship level course in whataboutism is what it was. They opened the case by lying. They said that the first person that was arrested was an Antifa person, and the police just let them go. I don't even know what the hell they were talking about, but the entire fact-checking world just erupted in like massive regurgitation, going, well, you're killing us over here. Why are you starting to defend the big lie with another big lie? It was really creepy. It was really creepy. Then they argued that the prosecution, the House managers, presented edited video, that they were the ones that were taking the president out of context, and that the video that they, of course the video was edited. The video was edited for time, but it wasn't edited for context. The president said what he said at that rally. Rudy Giuliani said what he said at that rally. Okay, on the day of the insurrection, Chris Christie got on the TV and said what he said. And what he said was, only the president can stop this. This is his mob, and he has to get up, and he has to denounce this, and he has to call them off. On the day of that insurrection, Adam Kinzinger said the same damn thing. On the day of that rally, Lindsey Graham called Ivanka and said, get your father to call off the mob. It's his mob. He needs to call them off. Now Lindsey Graham is blaming Nancy Pelosi, who the mob wanted to kill. These people are shameful. They are literally the most incredible liars I have ever experienced in my life, and I've spent my life in politics and around lawyers. This is shameful. This is so dishonest, so disingenuous. Then they tried to make a comparison. They played this very freaking long video over and over and over and over again of Democrats invoking the word fight. Fight as in a determined effort to get us paper ballots. Fight as in a determined effort to get $15 minimum wage passed. A determined effort is also a fight. But the way that they were telling the crowd that was armed and wearing combat gear and ready to engage in combat, which is also a definition of fight, physical combat, was different. Why was it different? Because they said trial by combat at the rally. Because they invoked the Revolutionary War, because Mo Brooks told them to go kick ass and take names. That is not a determined effort. That is physical combat. And that these lawyers are trying to confuse people with the word fight as if it's just a universal word that means combat. No, look it up. There are words that mean different things based on the context in which they are said. Holy crap, this was just unbelievable. This was amazing. And Donald Trump has promoted violence from the minute he had his first rally. This man has praised violent activities that he has witnessed on his behalf. When he tweeted, Liberate Michigan, and violence ensued in the same manner at the state level that did at the federal level by almost the same people with the same weapons and the same attitude and the same Trump hats and the same Trump t-shirts and the same QAnon flags and the same everything. MAGA flags, all of it exactly the same when those people threatened to overtake the Capitol in Michigan by force. Donald Trump praised them. When the same people with the same Trump flags, with the same Trump hats, with the same Trump trucks, with the same exact violence in their mind and in their hearts tried to run a Biden-Harris bus off the road in Texas and prevented them from having their rally in Texas, Donald Trump praised them. After an insurrection at the Capitol, with the same Trump hats and the same Trump flags and the same QAnon flags and the same exact sentiments and the fight for Trump and the chanting of fight for Trump and the fight and the fight and the stop the steal and the fight for Trump. He praised them. He told them they were special and he loved them. There is no defense for this indefensible thing except to confuse people and twist words into the meaning that the lawyers want that word to have when spoken by Democrats who are fighting for a $15 minimum wage or are fighting to get paper ballots in an election, which thank God we had this time. Thank God we had paper. Can you imagine having this election without the paper to recount? Can you imagine? You think this was heinous, this was ugly, this was bad, people died. But because of a determined effort on the part of Democrats to fight for paper trails and paper backup, we had paper. We were able to do a recount. And what did the recount show? What did it show? A free and fair election. 3 recounts in Georgia, 3 of them. President called 18 times. That's why they recorded him. They recorded him because it was the 18th time he had called. They had refused to entertain his conspiracy. They had refused to entertain the idea that something had gone awry in Georgia or in Michigan or in Pennsylvania or in Arizona. But he kept calling. He kept calling. And the only call that was recorded was in a one-party state. What does that mean? Well, in Georgia, apparently, you don't need 2 parties' consent to record somebody. In most states, you do. As a broadcaster, you learn that. And so you can't record somebody without their knowledge. Georgia, you can. And that is what they did because they knew exactly why he was calling 18 times. And Gabriel Sterling had already been to the podium and begged Donald Trump to stop the big lie because somebody was going to get shot and killed. That staffers, little guys who were simply IT guys who were trying to upload the data from one to another machine were threatened with death. And Donald Trump wouldn't stop the big lie. He kept the big lie. He kept on doing it. Because Donald Trump wanted angry, armed people to stop the certification of this election. He thought this was his last chance. And once he understood that they were willing to kill for him, he tweeted, Mike Pence is a coward. Mike Pence is a coward. He didn't do it. He didn't come through for us. And what do they start to do immediately? First, they get on a bullhorn and they read the tweet to each other. And then they know what the message is. Mike Pence is a traitor. Mike Pence is a coward. Hang Mike Pence. Hang Mike Pence. And guess what they did? They brought a gallows with them in case Donald Trump asked them to hang somebody. And the flag of Donald Trump was next to it with a pirate flag so that they could hang Mike Pence.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844.
561-270-3844. The last time the Senate convened, we had just reclaimed the Capitol from violent criminals who tried to stop Congress from doing our duty. The mob was fed lies. They were provoked by the president and other powerful people.
Really?
And they tried to use fear and violence to stop a specific proceeding of the first branch of the federal government, which they did not like.
Oh, so there's there's clarity in the Republican Party about what happened here. There's clarity. A cleansing moment of clarity by Mitch McConnell. I tell you, lots of people had a cleansing moment of clarity. Remember, when Lindsey Graham was first subject to this invasion, this insurrection, he said, "That's it. Fine line here. I'm out. I'm done. Can't have it. I can't do it. I'm out." Remember that? He was lit. He was drunk. But he said it. I'm done. I'm out. This is bridge too far. Now all of a sudden he's like, this is Nancy Pelosi's fault. He actually said this last night. He actually said this is Nancy Pelosi's fault. First he said he's out.
Trump and I, we've had a hell of a journey. I hate it being this way. Oh my God, I hate it. From my point of view, he's been a consequential president. But today, first thing you'll see. All I can say is count me out. Enough is enough. I've tried to be helpful. But when this Wisconsin Supreme Court ruled 4-3 that they didn't violate the Constitution of Wisconsin, I agree with the 3, but I accept the 4. If Al Gore can accept 5-4, he's not president. I can accept Wisconsin 4-3.
Oh, God. And then last night?
I think most Republicans found the presentation by the House managers offensive. And absurd. And here's what I want to know. What did Nancy Pelosi know, and when did she know it?
Are you freaking kidding me? They tried to kill her. It's her fault. She was committing suicide, apparently, according to Lindsay, when he's sober. When he's drunk, he gets it. I don't know. This is just so completely dishonest, what is going on now. And we still have to go through the questions. Okay, there'll be a Q&A now where the members of the Senate that choose to participate. Now, I know everybody knows this news from last night, right? You all know that last night, Ted Cruz and Lindsey Graham and Josh Hawley decided that they would meet with these defense lawyers and give them notes about how to present their case today. And then they would return to their sworn positions as jurists in the same case. In the same case. They would advise the defense what case to present, how to present it, and then they would return and sit back on the jury after taking an oath to do impartial justice. That's normal. Listen, here's the thing. This thing that we think of as a trial is not really a trial. It can be, but they're treating it as a kangaroo court, just like they treated the last one. Okay? This is the most obviously rigged trial that you'll ever see. And I want you to remember that they were very serious about Bill Clinton's trial. Witnesses, everything. They needed Bill Clinton to be sworn. And because Bill Clinton had consensual sex. And that was an impeachable offense. Oh my, he may have not told the unvarnished truth about what his definition of sex is. And he needed to just be removed from being the leader of the free world because he had a consensual affair and he tried to cover it up. But here you have an insurgency based on a president's willingness to tell a huge lie over and over and over and over for 8 long, unbearable months, to endorse right-wing, lunatic, fringy theories like QAnon. When he was asked specifically to denounce QAnon in Miami, I remember the NBC sit-down, and he was asked, will you once and for all just denounce this crazy conspiracy theory that says that Democrats are, drinking the blood of babies and that this government is run by a group of pedophiles? He said, no, I don't know anything about them. I know that they hate the pedophilia and they like me. Refused to denounce them. They understood that to mean an endorsement of the fact that they thought that America was being run by a deep state of pedophiles and lasers from outer space aimed at forests in California by Jews somewhere in the world. No, it suited him. It suited his purpose, and his purpose was to keep everybody confused and in the dark about the nature of good governance, about what it takes to actually have a government He wanted them to understand exactly what he wanted them to understand. And that was that America was rife with fraud and bad people, enemies of the people. The media was the enemy of the people. Everybody but him. He alone could fix it. Everybody but him was out to get them. He made them angry. He made them fearful. He made them believe in falsehoods and lies and theft and stealing from them when he was actually stealing from them. And then the defense today, just bizarro world, okay? Bizarre. They don't understand that in this country, the Constitution says that the Congress shall make no law abridging freedom of speech. Congress is not making any law here. They are holding accountable a president who said that this government had stolen from the people their votes, and that the election was rigged, it was fraudulent, it was a lie, it was, and that they needed to overthrow their government because their government was doing this to them. That's not protected speech, especially when you're the president, because here in this country, they keep referring to the Brandenburg case. You know what that was? The Brandenburg case was the case of a man named Mr. Brandenburg. Mr. Brandenburg was a Klan member. Mr. Brandenburg was a Klan member, an ordinary racist. He was from Ohio. That's why it's Brandenburg versus Ohio. Mr. Brandenburg liked using the N-word and saying that Jews needed to go back to Israel, as if that is where we come from. And his speech was protected because he was an ordinary racist. And there was no imminent violent activity that came from him saying Jews should go back to Israel. He is not the president of the United States who is sworn to enforce the laws.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
And to all of my wonderful supporters, I know you are disappointed, but I also want you to know that our incredible journey is only just beginning.
You know, you want to say that that was a mob? You want to say that was a violence? No, sir. No, ma'am. No, we could have a Second Amendment rally on those same steps that we had that rally yesterday. You know, and if we do, then it's going to be a sad day because there's going to be blood running out of that building. But at the end of the day, you mark my word, we will plant our flag on the desk of Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. Where I've come to the conclusion that the only good Democrat is a dead Democrat.
What can you and I do to a state legislature besides kill them? Although we should not do that. I'm not advising that, but I mean, what else can you do, right?
If you rush to heal, if you rush to everybody grab each other and sing Kumbaya, then we've accomplished nothing, and we'll be right back here in a few years.
So those are the Trump supporters that were ginned up by Donald Trump, except for the last. The last one was Heather Heyer's mother, who warned us that if we just move on, if we just pretend that Charlottesville was just some freaky day and that it wasn't a building sentiment that was being encouraged and grown and praised by the President of the United States, this white supremacy, this craziness. If we just moved on and we didn't recognize what Donald Trump was fostering in this country, the grievance machine that he was, then we would be right back here, meaning more dead people at the hands of Trump supporters, white supremacists, militiamen, etc. And she was right. She was right. So the first guy you saw was Cowboys for Trump. Now they were at that rally. The thing on the thing on his shirt, you know, the embroidery is C4T, with his Cowboys for Trump. I mean, they wear their support for this president. And now the Republicans are trying to say, hard to figure out what their intentions were. Hard to figure out. You know, I mean, how could you know what their intention? They wore it. They flew it. They wear it on their hats. They wear it on their T-shirts. They fly flags with their intentions, right? Fight for Trump. We're going to do this for Trump. It's all about Trump. I mean, we saw an enormous amount of evidence that proved the case that Donald Trump loved the idea of having his own private militia. He loved it. He loved having something outside the government that he could literally trigger and shoot and use as a threat against sitting senators, Congress members, and anybody that got in his way. He loved having his own. That was like why he was talking about tough guys at the beginning and how he loved, the undereducated, and he loved tough guys. And you got the military, and you had the cowboys, and you had the bikers for Trump. You see, this was everything that he was cultivating in this country. Everybody he was grooming to be violent on his behalf, and he did it from the beginning. And at the end, when he finally lost, he triggered them. He actually activated them. He commanded them. He literally ordered them to go fight for Trump. And they did. And now, honestly, you have Republicans who are saying 5 minutes ago, oh, no, they were provoked by Trump. And now they're saying, oh, so what? If this presidency wasn't one long lesson on impeachable offenses committed by a president who refuses to faithfully execute the laws. What does that mean? It means he literally tells people that he's got their back if they do illegal things. He said it from the beginning, right? I'll get your legal fees, punch him in the face. If you're violent on my behalf, I will not let them silence your voice. I will not let them. I got you. You go do lawless things. That is in complete and utter violation of a president's oath to execute faithfully all the laws, including destruction of property, including, threatening the lives of Congress members and senators, right? The man has violated his oath. The proper venue for that is impeachment, which is why people were talking about impeaching him from the beginning. From the beginning. Smart people who saw this coming said, get rid of him. Get rid of him now. Don't let this go on because it will turn ugly and violent. And it did. And it did. Now, the defense keeps playing these tapes of Democrats saying, the man is inciting violence. The man is actually praising violent people. The man is praising white supremacists. The man is telling people to liberate Michigan. The man is praising people who run buses off the road. The man is praising people that say we need to separate women from their nursing babies. Okay, the man is literally activating prison guards to pepper spray peaceful protesters. Yes, they were right. They were right. He needed to be removed from the beginning. From the beginning. And the reason we knew he was dishonest is because he literally kept saying, but what about her emails? But what about her emails? But what about her emails? This was all Russia interfering in our election. The bipartisan report, there's like 5-6 volumes that the Intelligence Committee under the Republican Senator Richard Burr, the chairman then of the Intelligence Committee, the Republican from North Carolina, no less, found that not only did they interfere in our election, but that Trump welcomed it, encouraged it, embraced it, egged them on, and used the hacked materials that were gotten from the Democratic National Committee, used them, and Roger Stone was convicted for lying about using them and timing them. And when the Access Hollywood tape came out, they were in a frenzy that day, all of those guys. Release more of, Podesta's emails. People need to know how to make great risotto, or just sort of insinuate that there's something in there. There was nothing in there. Nothing. Just like Biden's laptop, Hunter's laptop. There's something in there. There's nothing in there. Trump is a liar, and Trump is a demagogue. And Russia did interfere in 2016. And he did try to stop the certification of this election with violence. And anybody that wants to know it can now know it, because it was laid out before you in just 2 days. In 2 days. Everybody knows he did this. Chris Christie was on TV in public telling Donald Trump to call off the mob. It was his mob. That's why Chris Christie was telling him to call off the mob, because it was his. Lindsey Graham, I'm out. I'm sorry. I hate that it ended this way. I tried to be helpful, but this is a bridge too far. Mitch McConnell, he was provoked. The president provoked these people. He provoked them. He told them to go and attack, and they attacked. They said, stop the steal, just like he said. Disrupt the certification, just like he said. This was an 8-month campaign to radicalize the already, lunatic, fringy people, radicalize them online. He did everything the way that Al-Qaeda did it, the way that ISIS did it. They call him his base, which is English for Al-Qaeda, which means the base, in an 8-month campaign. In an 8-month campaign to short circuit this election because he knew he was going to lose back in May. He knew. The internal polling was not looking good for this man. He went down. What is it? You can't be below 48% and win. He was like in the 30s. Jordan in New Mexico.
Hi, Randy. First time caller, long time. I'm actually getting to speaking to you. Thank you. Bam, got my cherry pop. All right. My question for you is, I've just been wondering, Lindsey Graham seems to be the biggest advocate of Donald Trump and right now, and others are starting to back away. Is there any correlation between maybe him and his liability of election interference in his great state as well?
Well,
I'll take your response off here.
Okay. I don't know that he, cheated in his own election. I do know that he called Brad Raffensperger and asked what could be done. What can be done? Just like, Forrest Gump's mother. What can be done to get my son a decent education? What can be done? Right? So Lindsey Graham called Raffensperger to see what could be done to overturn the results of the Georgia election. Why Georgia? I have no earthly idea. Lindsey's from North Carolina or South Carolina, so why is he calling Georgia? I don't know. But we know that happened, and we know that Lindsey Graham on the day of the insurgency called Ivanka so that Ivanka could talk to her father and give the message from Lindsey, call off your mob. So Lindsey Graham knows this was Trump's mob. The idea that he doesn't know, the idea that he didn't try to overturn Georgia and he didn't make the phone call to Georgia, that would just be bullcrap. And it would be so interesting if we had witnesses in this trial that could actually say what Lindsey called about and what went on that day.
Clear. Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America. From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me. Help is on the way.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
All right, this is the Q&A portion of the trial, which you now can understand is not really a trial the way that we, citizens think of a trial. And how do we know that? Well, we know that because the jury, was involved in the defense's planning of their presentation last night and then went back to being on the jury. Sick, twisted, true. And now the jury is able to ask questions of the prosecutor and the defense, okay? So here's the question that is on the floor right now. Jamie Raskin is answering it. Is it true or false that the months leading up to January 6th, dozens of courts rejected Trump's efforts to overturn his loss to Joe Biden?
Judge Matthew Brown said, in the United States, the court has been presented with strained legal arguments without merit and speculative accusations. In the U.S., this cannot justify the disenfranchisement of a single voter, let alone all the voters of its sixth most populous state. Our people, laws, and institutions demand more. Then it went up to Judge Stefanos Bibas, who's a Trump appointee, who was a part of the appeals court panel. He said, the campaign's claims have no merit.
No merit.
The number of ballots it specifically challenges is far smaller than the 81,000 vote margin of victory, and it never claims fraud or that any votes were cast by illegal voters. Plus, tossing out millions of mail-in ballots would be drastic and unprecedented, disenfranchising a huge swath of the electorate and upsetting all of the down-ballot races, too, which incidentally weren't being challenged, even though it was the exact same ballot that had been brought. So the problem was when the president went from his judicial combat, which was fine, to intimidating and bullying state election officials and state legislators, and then finally, as Representative Cheney said, summoning a mob, assembling a mob, and then lighting the match for an insurrection against the union. When he crossed over from nonviolent means, no matter how ridiculous or absurd, that's fine, he's exercising his rights, to inciting violence. That's what this trial is about. And we heard very little of that from the presentation of the president's lawyers. They really didn't address the facts of the case at all. There were a couple propaganda reels about Democratic politicians that would be excluded in any court in the land. They talked about the rules of evidence. All of that was totally irrelevant to the case before us. Whatever you think about it, it's irrelevant. And we'll be happy, of course, to address the First Amendment arguments, too.
Mr. President.
The Senator from Maine.
Mr. President, I send a question to the desk.
The question is from Senator Collins and Senator Murkowski. It is for the counsel for the former president. Clerk will read.
Exactly when did President Trump learn of the breach of the Capitol? What specific actions did he take to bring the rioting to an end? And when did he take them? Please be as detailed as possible.
Clerk, read that question again. We're getting it back.
Exactly when did President Trump learn of the breach of the Capitol? And what specific actions did he take to bring the rioting to an end? And when did he take them? Please be as detailed as possible.
Mr. Van Veen.
The House managers have given us absolutely the other onto that question. We're able to piece together a timeline and it goes all the way back to December 31st, January 2nd. There is a lot of interaction between the authorities and getting folks to have security beforehand. On the day, we have a tweet at 2:38, so it was certainly sometime before then. With the rush to bring this impeachment, there's been absolutely no investigation into that. And that's the problem with this entire proceeding. The House managers did zero investigation, and the American people deserve a lot better than coming in here with no evidence, hearsay on top of hearsay on top of reports that are of hearsay. Due process is required here, and that was denied.
Mr. Vanderveen, he's a personal injury lawyer, like 1-800-CALL-LEE.
Mr. President.
Like that.
The Senator from Nevada.
Mr. President, I send a question to the desk.
The senator from Nevada, Senator Rosen, submits a question for the House managers. And the clerk will read it.
On January 6th, the anti-Semitic Proud Boys group that President Trump had told to stand by laid siege to the Capitol alongside other rioters, including one wearing a Camp Auschwitz shirt. Is there evidence that President Trump knew or should have known that his tolerance of anti-Semitic speech, hate speech, combined with his own rhetoric, could incite the kind of violence we saw on January 6th?
Mr. President, Senators, Donald Trump has a long history of praising and encouraging violence, as you saw. He has espoused hateful rhetoric himself. He has not just tolerated it, but he's encouraged hateful speech by others. He has refused, as you saw in the September debate, that interview, to condemn extremist and white supremacist groups like the Proud Boys. And he has, at every opportunity, encouraged and cultivated actual violence by these groups. Yes, he has encouraged actual violence, not just the word fight. He told groups like the Proud Boys, who had beaten people with baseball bats, to stand by. When his supporters in the 50-car caravan tried to drive a bus of Biden campaign workers off the road, he tweeted a video of that incident with fight music attached to it and wrote, "I love Texas." When his supporters sent death threats to the Republican Secretary of State Raffensperger in Georgia, he responded by calling Mr. Raffensperger an enemy of the state.
That's Stacey Plaskett, the delegate from the Virgin Islands. She's a House manager. And, you know, I'm sure she'll get to the part where he told the insurrectionists that he loved them and also praised the armed protesters who went to liberate Michigan at his request. Yeah. The president does encourage actual violence. Yes, he does.
Clear. All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
All right, they are going through the Q&A right now. This is a question from Senators Haggerty and I believe Scott from South Carolina. How many people were arrested at the Capitol? This question was directed to the former president's counsel. Bruce Castor, I believe, is going to answer.
Thank you, Senators, for that question. That's precisely what the 45th President believes this gathering is about. We believe in law and order and trust that the federal authorities that are conducting investigations and prosecutions against the criminals that invaded this building will continue their work and be as aggressive and thorough as we know them to always be, and that they will continue to identify those that entered the inner sanctum of our government and desecrated it. The 45th President no longer holds office. There is no sanction available under the Constitution, in our view, for him to be removed from office that he no longer holds. The only logical conclusion is that the purpose of this gathering is to embarrass the 45th President of the United States.
No, it's to disqualify him from ever running for office again.
That he should not be permitted to hold office in the future, or at the very least, publicize this throughout the land to try to damage his ability to run for office when and if he is acquitted, and at the same time, tell the 74 million people who voted for them that their choice was the wrong choice
I believe that this is a divisive way of going about handling impeachment, and it denigrates the great solemnity that should attach to such proceedings.
Oh, I see. So if you do stuff while you're president, the last month that you're president, you can shoot people. You can bomb blue states. You could do whatever you want. You know,
President.
Senator from Massachusetts.
President, I send a question to the House managers to the desk because the President's lawyers did not answer the question when it was posed to them.
The senator will send the question. Debate's not allowed. The question is from Senator Markey with Senator Duckworth to the manager of the part of the House Representatives. The clerk will read the question.
Exactly when did the president learn of the breach at the Capitol, and what steps did he take to address the violence? Please be as detailed as possible.
It's the same question Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski asked of the defense, but they didn't answer. So Markey and Tammy Duckworth re-asked it, this time to the House managers. When did he know? What did he do to stop the insurrection?
Just wish to respond.
Mr. President, Senators, this attack was on live TV, on all major networks in real time. The president, as president, has access to intelligence information, including reports from inside the Capitol. He knew the violence that was underway. He knew the severity of the threats. And most importantly, he knew that Capitol Police were overwhelmingly outnumbered and in a fight for their lives against thousands of insurgents with weapons. We know he knew that. We know that he did not send any individuals. We did not hear any tweets. We did not hear him tell those individuals, stop. This is wrong. You must go back. We did not hear that. So what else did the president do? We are unclear. But we believe it was a dereliction of his duty. And that was because he was the one who had caused them to come to the Capitol, and they were doing what he asked them to do. So there was no need for him to stop them from what they were engaged in. But one of the things I would like to ask is we still have not heard and posed to you all the questions that were raised by Mr. Raskin, Manager Raskin, in his closing argument. Why did the President Trump not tell the protesters to stop as soon as he learned about it? Why did President Trump do nothing to stop the attack for 2 hours after the attack began? Why did President Trump do nothing to help protect the Capitol and law enforcement battling the insurgents? You saw the body cam of a Capitol police officer at 4:29, still fighting. 4:29 after, since what time? 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Why did he not condemn the violent insurrection on January 6th? Those are the questions that we have as well. And the reason this question keeps coming up is because the answer is nothing.
Mr. President.
The Senator from Utah.
I send a question to the desk.
All right, this is obviously Mitt Romney sending a question.
The senator from Utah, Mr. Romney, on behalf of himself and Senator Collins. It's a question, and clerk will read it.
Who's it for?
Oh, and I apologize. The question is for both sides, so the time will be evenly divided.
All right, we're going to take a break here. We'll come back and figure out what the question is. I mean, this is the Senate. It's very slow and it's very prodding and it's very... So
Leahy's not exactly a ball of energy either.
It doesn't matter. When John Roberts was presiding over the first impeachment trial, it was the same. It was the same pace. It's just... this is the way the Senate is. But anyway, so there's a question for both sides. I don't know what it is yet. I guess it has something to do with the Secret Service and the safety of the president. I don't know. We'll see.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
All right, a question is now being asked by Senator Amy Klobuchar, Casey from Pennsylvania, and Sherrod Brown. It's being handed up to Patrick Leahy and...
It's a question from Senator Klobuchar, Senator Casey, Senator Brown to the House managers. The clerk will report.
In presenting your case, you relied on past precedents from impeachment trials, such as William Belknap's impeachment. After what you have presented in the course of this trial, if we do not convict former President Trump, what message will we be sending to future presidents and Congresses?
President Trump engaged in a course of conduct that incited an armed attack on the Capitol. He did so while seeking to overturn the results of the election and thwart the transfer of power. And when the attack began, he further incited violence aimed to his own vice president, even as demonstrated his state of mind by failing to defend us and the law enforcement officials who protect us. The consequences of his conduct were devastating on every level. Police officers were left overwhelmed, unprotected. Congress had to be evacuated. Our staff barricaded in this building, calling their families to say goodbye. Some of us, like Mr. Raskin, had children here. And these people in this building, some of whom were on the FBI's watch list, took photos, stole laptops, destroyed precious statues, including one of John Lewis, desecrated the statue of a recently deceased member of Congress who stood for nonviolence. This was devastating. And the world watched us. And the world is still watching us to see what we will do this day. And we'll know what we did this day 100 years from now. Those are the immediate consequences, and our actions will reverberate as to what are the future consequences. The extremists who attacked the Capitol at the president's provocation will be emboldened. All our intelligence agencies have confirmed this. It is not House managers saying that. There are quite literally standing by and standing ready. Donald Trump told them this is only the beginning. They are waiting and watching to see if Donald Trump is right that everyone said this was totally appropriate. Let me also bring something else up. I'll briefly say that defense counsels put a lot of videos out in their defense, playing clip after clip of Black women talking about fighting for a cause or an issue or a policy. It was not lost on me as so many of them were people of color and women, and Black women like myself, who are sick and tired of being sick and tired for our children, your children, our children. This summer, things happened that were violent, but there were also things that gave some of us Black women great comfort. Seeing Amish people from Pennsylvania standing up with us, members of Congress fighting up with us. And so I thought we were past that. I think maybe we're not. There are long-standing consequences, decisions like this that will define who we are as a people, who America is. We have in this room made monumental decisions. You all have made monumental decisions. We've declared wars, passed civil rights acts, ensured that no one in this country is a slave. Every American has the right to vote, unless you live in a territory. At this time, some of these decisions are even controversial, but history has shown that they define us as a country and as a people. Today is one of those moments, and history will wait for our decision.
Mr. President?
The Senator from Utah.
I send a question to the desk.
The Senator from Utah, Mr. Lee, sends a question on behalf of himself, Senator Hawley, Senator Crapel, Senator Blackburn, and Senator Portman. And the question is for the counsel for the former president. Clerk will read.
Multiple state constitutions enacted prior to 1787, namely the constitutions of Delaware, Virginia, Pennsylvania, and Vermont, specifically provided for the impeachment of a former officer. Given that the framers of the U.S. Constitution would have been aware of these provisions, does their decision to omit language specifically authorizing the impeachment of former officials indicate that they did not intend for our Constitution to allow for the impeachment of former officials?
Oh, Jesus, God. All right, so that's the Trumpy wing of the Trump party. That's the Mike Lees and the Crapos and the Marsha Blackburns and the Josh Hawleys. Obviously, it says removal and disqualification. Once you're convicted of an impeachable offense, there's another portion, because there's the word and and it's a separate vote, to disqualify somebody from ever holding an office of honor and or trust. So I think they thought about it. I think they included it.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
All right, the former Secretary of State of California, Alex Padilla, Secretary of State, who you know is in charge of elections. He's now, he is the senator, the junior senator from California, by virtue of the fact that Kamala Harris is now the vice president. And he has asked, how did this plot to unconstitutionally keep Trump in power lead to the radicalization of Trump's followers and the attack on the Capitol?
Directly, if a Democrat presidential candidate had an election rigged and stolen with proof of such acts at a level never seen before, the Democrat senators would consider it an act of war and fight to the death. Mitch and the Republicans do nothing, just want to let it pass. No fight. So Donald Trump was equating what Democrats would do if their election was stolen. He said they'd fight to the death. Why do you think he sends that tweet? Because he's trying to say, hey, the other side would fight to the death, so you should fight to the death. I mean, do we read that any other way?
Mr. President.
The Senator from Missouri.
Mr. President, on my behalf and on behalf of Senator Kramer, I send a question to the desk.
Senator Hawley, on behalf of himself and Senator Kramer, send a question for the council and House manager. And following our procedure, the first one to respond will be, after it's read, will be the counsel for the former president.
If the Senate's power to disqualify is not derivative of the power to remove a convicted president from office, could the Senate disqualify a sitting president but not remove him or her? If the Senate's power to disqualify is not derivative of the power to remove a convicted president from office, could the Senate disqualify a sitting president but not remove him or her?
President has 2.5 minutes.
They don't know. One is a personal injury attorney. The other one is a mob lawyer. How do they know?
No. But I can't let this rest. Mr. Castro attributed a statement the time before last that he was up here that Donald Trump had told his people to fight to the death. I'm not from here. I'm not like you guys. I was being very polite and given an opportunity to correct the record, and I thought that's exactly what he would do. But instead what he did is he came up and illustrated the problem with the presentation of the House case. It's been smoke and mirrors, and worse, it's been dishonest.
There's a constitutional question in front of you.
When he got caught,
and you're doing what you're accusing him of doing
today with all of the evidence, checking tweets, switching dates, everything they did. And bear in mind, I had 2 days to look at their evidence. And when I say 2 days, I mean they started putting in their evidence, so I started to be able to get looking at it.
Oh, my God. He's an insurance lawyer.
That is not the way this should be done. But what we discovered was he knew what he was doing. He knew that the president didn't say that to his people. What he said was, if it happened to the Dems, this is what they would do. In his speech that day, you know what he said? He said, if this happened to the Democrats, if the election was stolen from the Democrats, all hell would break loose. But, he said to his supporters, we are smarter, we are stronger, and we're going to do what they did all summer long. So what he did was he misrepresented a tweet to you to put forth the narrative that is wrong. It's wrong, it's dishonest, and the American people don't deserve this any longer. You must acquit.
So he never answered the question.
Managers on the part of the House of Representatives have 2.5 minutes.
And that was profoundly inaccurate and irrelevant to what the question is. So I'm going to get back to the question.
Thank you.
So under Article 2, Section 4, a president who is in office must be convicted before removal, and then must be removed before disqualification. Okay. But if the president is already out of office, then he can be separately disqualified, as this president is. But these powers have always been treated as separate, which is why I think there have been 8 people who've been convicted and removed, and just 3 of them disqualified. And as you know, there's a totally separate process within the Senate for doing this. The Constitution requires 2/3 vote for conviction. But for 51. Disqualification, it's a majority vote.
Right.
It's a separate thing. So people could vote to convict and then vote not to disqualify.
Right.
If they felt that the evidence demonstrated that the president was guilty of incitement to insurrection, they could vote to convict. But if they felt that they didn't want to exercise the further power established by the Constitution to disqualify, they wouldn't have to do that, and that could be something that's taken up separately by the Senate by majority vote.
Thank you.
Mr. President.
The Senator from Massachusetts.
I send a question to the desk.
So I just want to let you know that the defense lawyers for Donald Trump, they have lied repeatedly today. The fact checkers were going nuts.
Massachusetts has a question for the House managers. The clerk will read the question.
The defense's presentation highlighted the fact that Democratic members of Congress raised objections to counting of electoral votes in past joint sessions of Congress. To your knowledge, were any of those Democratic objections raised after insurrectionists stormed the Capitol in order to prevent the counting of electoral votes, and after the president's personal lawyer asked senators to make these objections specifically to delay the certification?
Okay, this is a throwaway question. You get it. This is a Democratic question that has absolutely nothing to do with anything except to get people to say, you know, to be able to stand up and say, no, we have never had any Democratic challenge to any election ever result in any kind of violence. ever. Now, if you wanted to go back to 2000, when the Supreme Court inserted itself and told Florida to stop counting votes, the only violence that ensued was on, again, the Republican side. That happened when the Republican staffers, the Brooks Brothers Army, dressed in khakis and polo shirts, came down to Florida and started banging on the supervisor of elections windows saying, "Let us in, let us in," because they weren't convinced yet that the Supreme Court would interfere on their behalf, which they did. And Al Gore respected that decision and exited with grace, even though it was 535 votes separating Bush and Gore. But the violence came from the Republicans. Even then, have a weekend.